Welcome everyone to Jeremy the Curious Coder. I'm here to help you become a more curious software developer. So great to have you. Today we're going to be talking about the article of the week. If you want to see all the articles I recommended this week, check out my newsletter, The Curious Coder. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. But today we're going to talk about this article, Reconsider by David Heinemeier Hansson. You probably know him by DHH. Fascinating person, co-founder of Basecamp, which is like a productivity software, and Hey Email, which I love. It's a really simplified way of doing email. And whenever I look at Gmail, I want to throw up now. So thank you, DHH, for that. One of the really interesting things he's done, though, is he's run this company called Basecamp as a profitable and small company instead of trying to scale it super fast like a giant VC, right? So they haven't raised money, they've stayed private, and they've stayed really profitable and slow growth, which I think is really commendable. Now, what's interesting is that DHH writes about this in the context of good enough. And what he does is he talks about the alternative, right? What could have been Basecamp. And I think, for example, Asana is a really good example of this. So Asana was, I think, a former Facebook employee who came up with an idea, raised a bunch of money, and then tried to scale really, really fast and grow quickly. And then the goal then is to exit for a huge amount of money or to IPO and become your own, the next Mark Zuckerberg. Now, this is not an inherently bad way of doing things. It does come with a huge cost, though. And this is what I really want to talk about today, is this idea of being the best in a particular field and what that means for your priorities. And I think a lot of times we're encouraged to be the best at all times. I remember I had a fourth grade teacher who was pounding into our heads, be the best that you can be. And I love it. I think we should strive for greatness, but we should be really thoughtful about which greatness we strive for. What I really think this article is about is not about like finding good enough and just loafing it. I think it's really about is priorities. What priorities do you have? We can't be the best at everything. We have to pick very specifically what we're going to be great at and what we're okay with just good enough, right? And that's a really challenging choice to make, and it's really complicated and it's really personal. But I want to share one of the things that I've really gone back and forth with in terms of this and the good enough that I've found. So my health has kind of been all over the place, right? When I was in high school, I was in what I would consider excellent health. I was a fantastic cross-country runner. I worked incredibly hard at it, and it was, outside of school, my priority. I was really diligent about working out every night, doing all the core I could, eating healthy and sleeping the right amount, and it was all encompassing. When I got to college, I decided that was too much, and me being the all or nothing thinker I am, just like these startup CEOs, I decided that instead of, finding some reasonable exercise regimen, I couldn't do what I was doing before, so I was going to do nothing. And I scaled back and I gained a lot of weight and I became really unhealthy compared to what I used to be. And for a long time I struggled with how to get back into it. I would say, "Oh, I'm going to run again." And I would try to run as fast as I could and sprint just like I used to, and I would end up totally demoralized, exhausted and hurting in pain. And I did this for years. I would do nothing for long stretches, and I would say, "I'm going to run a 5K as fast as I can." And I'd do it, and it would be a bad experience, and just on and on. Now, what I finally did to kick this is I said, "I'm going to walk more." It was the smallest goal I've ever set. It was embarrassingly small, and I've written about that. This is where the idea kind of came from. Why I'm talking about this is I wrote an article called "If It's Not Embarrassing, You're Not Learning." And what that means is you have to start really small and you have to find what is just good enough. What is a start? And so that's what I did. I started walking, just more intentionally walking. I didn't set a number. I just tracked it and observed, when do I walk more and how can I walk more? And I just asked those kind of open-ended questions. And I ended up losing 10 pounds and I feel great. I feel much better. And I've continued walking, and actually I'm going to start running again very slowly for short distances just to get back into it. And I've really been surprised at how much I was holding myself back because all I could think of was the all or the nothing. And running is no longer my priority, and I didn't know how to manage that. And so what I want us to take away from this is to reconsider, using the title of the article, what is important to us, what is worth devoting lots of time to, and what is just good enough, right? I think a lot of times we think it has to be the best or we're not going to think about it at all. I don't think that's sustainable. It is good to have some things as the best, but we can't just totally neglect things that aren't our top priorities. And I think the reason we neglect them is we think we can't be the best. And it's okay. I don't need to be the best runner anymore, but I would like to be good enough at it that I'm healthy, you know? And so I would really like us to think about the areas of our life we're not happy with and think about, are we trying to be the best and what would be good enough? And I think what I really love about this article is he wrapped up by talking about what base camp could have been. They could have tried to raise a bunch of money, right? They could have been huge, right? And that's the all, is they could have been huge, or they could have been really burnt out and nothing. And instead, what DHH and his co-founder Jason Friedman chose was somewhere in the middle, was good enough. Working 40 hours a week, doing inspiring work for them, being profitable and growing slowly. That was good enough for them. And I think when we really think about it, it would be good enough for a lot of us. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Again, you can subscribe to my newsletter for the full list of articles. But let me know what you think here. I'll have my contact info in the show notes. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you're trying to do that's good enough, what you're reconsidering.